So today we're going to be looking at the CAD Image or CI Tools Keynotes tool. I'm Josh Osborne. I'm the product manager for the CI Tools here at Central Innovation in Auckland. Well, at home, in fact, in Auckland. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the Keynotes tool essentially for people who have never used it before or have used it only a little and that sort of thing. So it will be sort of a demo and a sort of a how-to combined. If you have any questions as we go along, I will check on those at the end of the session. So enter them in the questions panel and go to webinar. And then once we've finished up with the sort of demo part, I'll look over the questions, and anything I can answer straight away I will, and anything I can't, I'll follow you up with an email afterwards instead. All right. I'm going to be working in ArchiCAD 23 today, but the way that the tool works is very similar in 23 to how it was in 22 and 21, and then in versions 20 and before then it looks quite similar, although not exactly the same. You'll probably be able to muddle your way through based on what you see here though. But for most of you on 23, this is what it'll look like for you. So I'm just in ArchiCAD 23 and I've got my Keynotes palette set up here. I've got it docked on the side just for convenience, but the way that you get to the Keynotes tool is from the CI Tools menu, or if you're in 22, the CAD Image menu. Go down to Keynotes and click on Keynotes palette here, and that'll pop up the palette for you. And that's how we're going to use most of the things that we'll be doing today. So before I start, I'll just give you a brief rundown of what the Keynotes tool actually is. You probably have an idea based on the name, but basically it's for making keynotes. It'll let you import a database or create a database and then go through and assign notes to elements or draw notes wherever you want to have them. It looks after updates to notes and scheduling of notes so that you don't lose them and that sort of thing. Essentially, it's just the way that you will manage, well, if you use the tool, the way that you will manage all of your notes in ArchiCAD, and it tries to look after all of the tedious stuff like checking and that sort of thing for you, so you don't have to mess around eyeballing everything after the fact. So the first part of the tool that we'll look at is actually getting a database into it. So from my menu here, I'm going to choose the Keynotes Manager, which is this icon here. And the manager is the way that you get a database into your project and how you do things with that database then. So you can see at the moment I've got a bunch of buttons down the side here to let me do various things. To start with, I'm going to choose to import notes. There's a couple of other things that we can do, which I'll cover later, but just importing them for now. And I'm going to choose the CI Tools Keynotes file. This is the one that's actually included with the tool when you install it. It'll be in your ArchiCAD 23 folder under CI Tools Extras. Once I select that file, you'll see it gives me a preview of what it's about to bring in. So you can see on the right here is the keynotes that are currently in the file, which is nothing. And on the left is the keynotes that are in the file that I'm bringing in. And it's color-coded to show what it's going to do. So at the moment, because I don't have any keynotes at all, everything is showing as blue, which means those are notes that don't currently exist in the project, and it's going to bring them in. So I can go through here and I can select individual notes and just import them piece by piece if I like, or I can click the Import All button, which will bring them all over, and then hit OK. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring in the entire database, and then the manager shows that new database. Once I hit OK, you will now be able to see them in the palette as well. Now, this note database that we have in the project that I've imported, the one that we install by default, is not meant to be a sort of these are the notes you will use sort of be all and end all sort of thing. It's more intended to be an example of how Keynotes sort of should look, how the file should be structured and that sort of thing. So as more of a reference for you, but you're welcome to use the list obviously and modify it to your needs as you go. So now that I have my notes in the project, now this is a palette here, so obviously we can actually click on the project and that sort of thing while we have that open. And while we're working in here, the interface has a couple of elements that you're going to want to look at. So first of all is the Keynote editing, which will let you obviously edit a note as you go. So we've got the key, which is it's sort of a unique ID for the note, and that's the 20101, and that's pretty much the only required element for a note, is for it to have a key. We've also got a title, which some of my notes don't have one of, but generally you will want to have one because it's what makes the notes actually be a note. There's also a field for a specification reference if you're using one of those, and then a long description down at the bottom here. And when you select any of your notes, you can modify these on the fly as you go. And you can also use this button up here to add entirely new notes, and this button here to delete notes. So we'll look at that briefly a little bit later, how you work with added and deleted and modified notes. But for now, we just want to get some notes placed down the project. So the first way I'm going to show you how to do that is just by double-clicking on the note that you want. So I'm going to double-click on the retaining walls note here, and you'll see as soon as I do that, the label tool has become selected in ArchiCAD, and the CI Tools Keynote label type has been selected. And now if I click and draw the note, it's going to draw that note, 20101, retaining walls, in my project. And now I can select the label, and we'll just have a quick look at the settings for that label so you can see how it works. So it is just a label type. And if we go into the Keynotes label section here, we can modify the way that it looks. At the moment, it's defaulted to this round label type, which I kind of hate. So I'm going to change it to vertical edges, because I like the look of that. And you can see while we're in here that there's various settings for the way that the text is laid out inside the frame and the attributes of it. You can choose the way that it shows, and under configuration you can also choose what it shows. So at the moment it's showing just the key, so all we're seeing is 20101. But if I came in here and I turned on title and hit OK, you'll see it's changed to the formatting that I chose, the frame shape, and it's also added the title in as well. So that's great, that's what I want. And now you can see, now that I have the label selected, in my palette I don't have anything selected up here, so this area is grayed out, but the label contents section below is now showing some information because it's showing me what's in the label that I have selected. So at the moment we've just got the one note in it, 20101, but I can come through here and I can double click while I have this label selected, double click on any note here, and that'll add that note into the label. So you can see now the label contains both of the notes that I've added to it. And you can use the controls in the label contents section to manipulate these notes that are in the label as well. So if I select it, you can see I've got a option to add the selected keynotes to the label, so that will just do the same as what double clicking up here already did to put it in there. I can select notes in here and delete them, so I can remove notes from the label. And I can also hide notes as well, and this is useful in some cases where you want a label to know that it has a note attached to it. This will be more useful when we look at attribute notes later, but basically using the hide option, the label still knows that it has this 20101 element in it, but it's not showing it at the moment, and I can hide and unhide that using this control here. At the moment, because they're just manually created notes, that's not very useful, but later on, once we're tying things to attributes, you may want to use that so that things still have the notes that you want, but they're not showing them all the time. I'm just going to unhide that one again. So you can then go through double-clicking on notes and placing them throughout your project. Now, as you can see, they've defaulted back to the circle because all I did before was I changed the style of this label here and not the default label. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the style. Now, the way that styles work is they're quite similar to how favorites work in ArchiCAD. The problem with favorites being that if you apply a favorite label, it's going to replace all of the data as well. So if I selected this and saved a favorite of it, and then applied that favorite to this label, it would change to the style that I want, but it would also change to the 2 notes that I want, which is not what I'm after. I just want to change the way that it looks. I don't want to change the actual notes in it. So I'm going to select this label, and then down at the bottom here under Label Style, I'm going to click here, and you can see at the moment it's set to custom settings because I don't have any styles set up. So I'm going to click New Style, and I'm going to make a new style. Can't think of a creative name right now, so there we go, New Style 1. And now I have a label style called New Style 1. And I can go over and select one of these labels now. New Style 1 is selected, so I just click on the box and choose to apply it. And that will apply that style, retaining the note that it had, but using the style that I want. And I can also save this as a style as well. And then I can toggle between them if I want to. So this one has, I can apply horrible old style, or I can go in and choose new style and then apply new style. So just remember, when you're working with styles, you need to first select the style that you want to change to from the list at the bottom here, and then press apply, because the way that this works is that it doesn't apply them right away because you don't always necessarily want to apply. You can also update and change to custom settings in here, so you need to select it first and then make the change. And then also in here there's the option to edit styles, which will open up a sort of a style manager type thing, which will let you create and delete styles inside of it, and you can import and export them. So if you, again, similar to with anything else that you do with favorites or that sort of thing, you can export the styles that you've made in this project and use them in other projects. All right, so that's applying the styles. I'm just going to override this with that one because I don't like the circle. So that's independently placed notes. The next thing that you can do is you can place notes to a particular element. And so the way that you do this is you select the element that you want to label, select the note that you want, and double click. And what that will do is it will create a new label that attaches to that element, but otherwise works essentially the same as the other labels do. So you can apply styles to it, you can edit it in here as you could before. Sorry, you can edit them in here as you could before. But now, because it's attached to this actual element, if I, instead of clicking on the label itself, if I click on the element, you'll see the label content still knows what's in there. And so that's where it can become useful to use the hide command, is that you could have an element that you assign multiple notes to, but you only want to show certain labels. And so that's where you use this hide function. And it will work much the same way as the labels did. So if I double click on another note, it will stack it up into that same label, and I have the same controls to add, delete, and hide notes that are inside that label here. So that's same as before, but attached to an element. And then the third way that you can label elements is by using attribute labels. So the way that you get to those is through the manager. Choose the attribute keynotes section here, and then you can choose an attribute and associate a note with it. So I'm going to choose brick here, and I'm going to choose brickwork because that sounds vaguely related, and I'm going to hit OK. And you see that doing that does nothing in my floor plan. And if I select any of my elements, I don't see anything because they don't match. However, if I change this element here to use the brick, you can see selecting this wall, label contents is nothing, but selecting this wall, I now have some label contents showing, and they'll all default to hidden. We don't want you to place 4 walls and suddenly have 4 labels sprout up on them. So they all hide by default, but we can then come in here and unhide them, and you can see now that it has a label attached to it which contains the thing that we assigned to the attribute, and it has this little icon next to it to show you that it's an attribute keynote, not a manually placed note. So you can still add manually placed notes in it as you would with the other label types, but this one has its own sort of inherent note. and using the hide option, you can make those show or not. So you can, depending on what your criteria for your attributes are or what attributes are applied to the element, you could stack up a whole bunch of these and have them all inside the one element, and then just show the bits that you want. So that's the 3 ways of adding the notes. The next thing that you'll want to do once you're working with notes is to update your database. So often you'll be modifying notes on the fly inside your ArchiCAD project, or if you use some external software to generate your notes, you'll be updating elements in there as well. Or possibly you have updated the notes database in a different ArchiCAD project and you want to get those changes back into your other projects. The way that you do that is again through the manager and using the export option. So once you've made your changes that you want to your database, you export that, and that will let you export a selection or all of your notes to a XML or CSV file, which you can then import into your other projects. I've done that already with a database, so I'm going to do the import, which is the second part. So this is to bring in an updated database. So I'm going to click import and I'm going to choose test1, which is the one that I modified earlier, and hit open. And once I do that again, our Keynotes review will show up as it did before, but you can see a bit of the difference now. So on the right is again the database in the project currently, and the left is what the import is going to do. It's not showing me any of the notes that are in the file I'm importing that already match up with what is there. It's only showing me changes. However, if I untick that box, you can see the whole database that it's looking at. But I'm just interested in changes for now. So you can see that 0101 first is orange here, which means that it is changed. And so you can see the title is the same as it was before. Sorry, the key is the same as it was before, but the title is changed, it shows in orange, and the long description is changed also. Retaining walls, I've just changed the spelling in the title, so that's all that's changed. And the same for vehicle crossing. So you can see which part of the note is changed, and also that the fact that that note is changed. And then we also have a new note as well, and so that's showing in blue, and that shows you the new elements, which it's an entirely new note, so all elements are blue. So now that I've done that, I can hit OK, and then OK again. And that has brought in the note changes. So you can see the new one is added, and retraining walls and vehicle grossing are now there. But the notes that I have placed don't show that change. So what you need to do next is to run an audit, which is this option here. We don't update everything automatically because, aside from the fact that it would take ArchiCAD a long time to always be checking, it means that you have control of when your labels will change and when they won't, because there are certain times where you might want to import something but not necessarily update it right away, or you might want to check things before then. So it is staged manually so that you have control of what you do then. So click the audit button and it brings up a panel here similar to the review that we saw before, and you can see that we've got some changed elements here. They're showing in orange again, and it tells you where they are. So I'm going to select the first one and press the zoom to option, and it will zoom to the label which contains a change, which is that one, and it's telling us that 20101 has changed in some way, and then 20202 has also changed. And if I select that one and zoom to, in this case, it's in the same label, but it will let you move to each label as you go and see what they were before. And then you can go through and you can replace them if you like, or you can just hit repair. If you hit repair on the selected one, it'll repair just that selected thing. And what repair does is that it will make it be the thing that the database is updated to. And you can hit refresh here to make sure that it's all good, but it is now. And so that has updated that label now. That was the only place that actually had those in. So that's the only change that has. But the other thing that the audit is useful for is checking for orphans as well. So what that is that I'm going to go through and I'm going to delete retraining walls. And then I'm going to run the audit again. And it's going to tell me that there is an orphaned note now. And what an orphaned note means is essentially that what an orphan means, it has lost its parent. So essentially what it means in terms of the Keynotes tool is that there is a label somewhere which has a note in it, but that note doesn't exist anymore, and so it's orphaned. And so I now have, I can zoom to it again so that I can see where it is. And then I can use the repair option to fix it up. And what fixing it up means in terms of orphaned notes is it removes that note. So if I hit repair, you'll see it removes that note from the label. So this now reflects what's actually in the database, which is to say that that note is gone now. If you had any labels and they only had one note in them, or they had multiple notes and all of those notes will be deleted, the label will be deleted entirely. But in this case, one of the notes that was in it is still there. So it hasn't deleted the whole note, it's just deleted that note. Sorry, the whole label is deleted that note out of the label. So that's what the audit tool is for fixing up changes to your database or for correcting things that shouldn't be there anymore. All right. So the last thing that you'll be wanting to do, now that you've got a bunch of notes drawn in your project, is you're going to want to schedule them. And this is nice and easy. So we're just going to jump over to a layout. So there's the layout of that floor plan view. And go to your CI Tools menu, Keynotes, and choose the Create Schedule option. And when that comes up, it's going to give you a bunch of options. So at the top here, you've got options to create the schedule for the current layout or for all layouts. If you choose to do all, obviously it's going to take a while to go through, although once you choose that, you do get the option to say only if notes are found, and if you do that, it'll only attach schedules to any layouts that it finds that actually have notes, no labels shown at all. I'm just going to go for the current layout for now. Then you can choose what you want to include in the schedule. So it defaults to only keynotes visible in that layout. But you can also get it to use a manual selection of notes, the notes that are visible on any layout, notes that are used in the project. So that's similar to the any layout option, only it will also include notes that aren't actually on any layout but are in use in the project, or all keynotes, which is just everything. And then the last settings here are just to set the way that the schedule looks, which I'll look at once we place one. And there's also an option here to fit schedule to layout, which will happen if you have a larger schedule selected. And what that will do is it will try to fit your schedule into the page size it has available, and then when it can't, it'll make more pages to fit them all onto it. So that'll be useful if you're doing a all keynotes or only in this project type. But for this one, it's going to be a short list. So I hit OK. And then if I have a look up in the top left of this layout, you'll see the schedule is being placed. And so this is showing all of the notes that I have that you can currently see labeled in this schedule. So if I select the object that is the schedule now, you can change some of the settings. So you can choose what you want to show. At the moment, it's showing everything. As you can see, it's showing the ID, the title, the description, and it would be showing a speaker if I was using any, but I'm not. You can also set the way that the text is laid out in the schedule. And then you can set the formatting of the text for each element and a couple of options to do with them. And then set how you want the frame to look as well. So you've got the text orientation and the way that the frame around the schedule will look. And now if I go back to my floor plan and add some more notes willy-nilly and go back to this layout, I just go back to the CI Tools menu, Keynotes, Update Schedules. I'm going to update just the current layout, and it will automatically show all of the new notes that I just placed there. So that's how you keep them up to date. So your workflow generally when you make any changes to your database will be that you import the changes, you run the audit tool to make sure that everything is still in sync with everything else, and then jump to your layouts or use the update all option to go through and update all of your schedules, and that will get you back in sync with the way that your database has changed. So yeah, so that's the flying tour of the tool. One more thing before I go to the questions is just there is another option for bringing in notes, and that's to link. So at the moment I'm just working with a note database that I've actually imported into this project, but you also have the option to link notes as well. And what that will do is it'll let you link to a file, and then as you make any changes to that file, you can choose the update option here or this button here to automatically sync with that file. So you need to always have access to the file to be able to link to it. So it should be somewhere local that you can see easily. But that's just a good way to sort of shortcut the process of having to import and export them all the time. Is you can just link to one file and then keep that up to date. And then each project that it depends on, you just hit update and it's up to date. And also, if you're a New Zealand customer, you can also link to an online master spec or smart spec project if you use those products, and that will do a similar thing. Is it'll let you update. It'll let you import the database from those sources and then update once you make changes in either of those sources as well. Thank you, everyone. The recording will be up available on MyCI sometime soon. And thanks very much for your time. And if you don't currently use Keynotes but you want to try it, you can always install a trial version from the CI Tools installer. Just click on the Trials tab there, and that'll let you install a trial version. All right, thank you.